Hey there, viewers. This is Jamal from the dubtalkpodcast. Now, before we get into tonight's episode, I would like to take a moment to warn you that this is not the full film of HAL. Rather, this is a discussion of the film. If you want to watch the film, it is available for streaming on Funimation's website, as well as the Funimation Now app. It's also available for purchase on Right Stuff or wherever you buy your anime. That having been said, there's also language and content that may not be suitable for younger audiences, so viewer discretion is advised. As this is a review, there will also be spoilers for HAL, as well as any other anime or media to occur, so be very careful if there's something you haven't listened to yet. Last but not least, the views and opinions expressed are those of myself and my co-host for tonight's episode, and does not necessarily reflect those of the Dub Talk podcast. Now gather around as we discuss a tale of love and loss between a human and a robot. Hey, no judging. Love knows no bounds. It transcends humanity, and all that matters is affairs of the heart. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll probably be frustrated, but join us, won't you, for the review of HAL. Hello everybody, welcome to Dub Talk, the podcast where we cover the latest and greatest in anime. Tonight is very special, however, because we're going deeper than roper than your favorite anime movies. That's right, it's our annual Summer at the Movies. And with me tonight is my partner in crime for this year, Zenith.
Hey everybody, I'm Zenith Warrior Princess, and we're here to talk about a movie that I hadn't heard of before, and I have things to say. But welcome to Dub Talk, latest and greatest of dubs, and sometimes we talk about new stuff.
In case you haven't noticed by the title of the episode, we will be covering the 2013 anime film HAL from which studio? Yes, that's right, the same people that brought you the Attack on Titan franchise.
Really?
And in case, yes, and trust me, that is going to be very relevant for tonight. And in case you missed that disclaimer at the beginning, no, this is not the full film of HAL. Please take your pilot and ask somewhere else. And by extension, no, this is not the film Shadow HAL. Thank you, Google search, for reminding me that film exists.
And this is not going to be this is going to be a full-on discussion. We're going to spoil things. If you haven't seen HAL already, go do it. It's only an hour long. Yes. It's pretty easy to watch. I have thoughts, but we'll get to that.
Emphasis on discussion. In case you couldn't tell by the time code listed on the video, yes, the movie's only an hour long, but the synopsis goes as follows. Man, I wish I could find a shorter synopsis. Kurumi's heart was broken by the sudden death of her boyfriend in a tragic airplane accident. Forced to carry on without her beloved HAL, she fell into a reclusive and joyless existence. Kurumi had given up on the world, but a brilliant scientist devised the plan to win her back. By melding futuristic technology with the binary equivalent of human emotion, they created an ultra-lifelike robotic surrogate to take HAL's place, and lured Kurumi from her shroud of solitude. Resisted at first, this shattered beauty slowly yielded to her feelings of longing, and took comfort in the company of a robot, though the unique bond grew stronger with each passing day. Kurumi and HAL would soon discover that nothing about the artificial love story was quite as it seemed. On the off chance you've noticed, if I sound a little congested, I do apologize. The weather's been crazy here in Florida recently, so just bear with me here.
Yeah, it's been pretty bad on my end too. We've had a heat wave, and my joints swole up so much today that I had to just take a 4-hour nap because I literally just could not even do anything. You know when people say they can't even, that was the embodiment of literally can't even.
Yeah, I feel your pain. So yeah, this is kind of an interesting film. And honestly, it's also kind of interesting. I'm discussing it with you, Zenith, because I own this copy on Blu-ray, DVD, And I bought this at probably the only time I ever went to AB, which now that you think about it, that's when I first met you.
Wow, that's actually kind of crazy because I remember that anime bus, and that was a while back. That was when I first started like my first attempt at history of One Piece, way back when.
Yes, and hopefully with my condition right now, we could keep this episode in one piece.
Let
Well,
us hope that Toei doesn't try to take down their own channel again.
well, Toei's gonna Toei. Let's be honest.
But yeah, this movie was interesting for me. I have issues, but the thing is, I like the premise. I think the one thing that really struck me about it was the premise. We have seen something like this with like AI and a few other films where people cope with death with a robotic companion, but having a robot take on the visage of a human is somewhat new. Like there are cliche parts to it, but I like the idea. The biggest problem I have is when we get to the twist, and I think the twist spoils what they were going to go for with the entire premise. And overall, I found this okay. I think it could have been so much more. I love the quiet moments. The best part about this film is the quiet moments, and that's when I see where they were going for with it. But I feel like a lot of this is ruined because parts of it are a bit cliche and forced, and I feel like they foreshadow the twist way too early on, and a lot of the problem I have is with the twist and the switching of the message.
Yeah, but we'll get to that twist part. We'll get to that twist later on. So right now, let's start as we always do with our ADR director and scriptwriter. Our ADR director is Mike McFarlane, and our scriptwriter is Brian Clinkerbeard. Mike McFarlane, you've seen him direct other shows such as Blood Blockade Battlefront, the Evangelion Rebuild movies, the Tokyo Ghoul franchise, relevant to tonight's discussion, Attack on Titan. Bonnie Clinkerbeard, you see her right for other stuff such as the Black Butler franchise, a Symptomatical Index 1, 2, the Miracle of Endymion movie, a certain scientific railgun, Railgun S, Death Parade, and Yuri on Ice. So Zen, why don't you go first on this discussion?
Um, I'm torn about this dub because I normally love Mike McFarland. He has done some of my favorite dubs in the business. Blood Blockade Battlefront is one of my favorite dubs. I put up there with like Cowboy Bebop because it is just so good. But on the other hand, this dub has issues. I think the biggest problem might be the writing. It might be Bonnie, but I can't really tell because a lot of it is directing. Um, the voice acting itself is very good. Tonally, it's very good vocally. But the problem I have is there's not enough range of emotion. It is ironically enough a lot of times robotic, and we'll get into that when we discuss Hal and Kurumi, and I think part of that is the point, but it carries over to the other characters as well, and I don't think there's enough emotion in it. And what leads to this, and I think is the cause of this, is that every single character speaks in a very proper dialect. It reads like a literal translation, and sometimes that can work. But here, we get these awkward pauses, like it's, you know in Kingdom Hearts RE Chain of Memories, where they have to match the Japanese instead of like making it accessible in English. It feels stilted, and I have a lot of problems when we get to some really good parts, and we see that there can be good acting on display, but then there's a line that's thrown in that throws me off where they say, they don't use contractions, they will use things properly, and they won't give themselves a pause before they get to the next thought. it very much reads as if a first draft of a literal translation, if that makes sense.
I think I see where you're coming from because are you done?
I'm all done. Yeah.
Okay, because that kind of leads to what I have to say. With body, I'm very used to writing. Like sometimes I can't tell if it's like a really async rock. That's like a good key to being a good script writer. It's like if you can make something like don't feel not like out if there's something out of place. As long as you don't make it like feel too out of place and it works with the context, I think you'll be alright. I didn't really find anything for body that really bothered me or anything. But then again, I have not watched this in the Japanese, so
Same. I've
yeah,
only seen the dub, so I'm just speaking um from what I can hear. And normally when I put this sort of thing where it's like it feels like they just took the literal script, it's because I've seen the sub. But that's just how noticeable it was to me.
yeah,
In this regards.
yeah. Whereas Mike McFarlane, first off, this is the first time I've ever talked about a Mike McFarlane project ever. Like, I mean, I know we talked about stuff in the past, but I never. He's usually the guy you get for like big day projects and so like the stuff I just listed off. But there are also some smaller intimate projects he'll get into like the Juji Ito collection, Arifureta Nova, that kind of thing. And not to date this episode any further, but happy belated birthday, Mike McFarlane.
Happy belated birthday. You still do great stuff. I'm sorry I didn't like this. I don't think it was your fault.
And part of the reason I agree with that sentiment is because I owned the copy, so I was able, because it has a commentary on it. I decided to check out the commentary just before I came onto this recording. The reason I say Attack on Titan was relevant to tonight's discussion is not only because it was produced by the same studio, but this stuff was being recorded at just as Mike was wrapping up Attack on Titan.
Really?
Yeah,
Because
because it's a matter of fact, if you look at the additional voices credits, you see Laura Lander on there. Laura Lander, Addie from Attack on Titan.
wow. Because like
Yes.
I've watched the first season of Attack on Titan dubbed because Lilac showed that to me. That is a fantastic dub. So yeah, I'm leaning towards maybe the script. Bonnie might have something to do with how stilted this is.
I think the reason you could think that is because it took them 2.5 weeks to dub this.
Hmm.
Not only that, but certain key actors we will get to later. Some been around a while and didn't we have its main big roles, and one in particular was kind of green when they started this project. So, but we'll,
Yeah, it
but we'll
definitely
get
does show.
but we'll get more into that later on. But I think for right now, uh, opinions on this are kind of mixed. Like I don't really have any real problems with it. Of course, Zenith does with the script, but on and on, they did the best they can.
Having not seen the sub, I can't talk adaptation wise, but what I see here is um great vocal delivery, just problems with the writing, personally.
Yes. And not only that, but I think because I read a review an A&M review of this, and they said that some of the animation seemed kind of out of the place, whereas
Yeah.
some of the other animation was kind of better. In particular, with the old folks home, which let's get into that section now because our first section covers a wide variety of old folks. We have Dr. Aranami, the essentially the robotic therapist and neighborhood doctor who helps treat our patient to robotic therapy after the loss of their loved one in the plane crash.
Mm-hmm.
More on that later. We have Tokyo, who's HAL's grandfather, who I guess essentially was exposition for HAL's character, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Tsukiko, uh, old handicapped lady who decides to help Hal out after initially calling him a sissy for lack of better terms I can remember right now. After Hal tries to steal pet giraffe for Kurumi from a convenience store, she calls up the said owner, who I guess she had connections with, and got him that pet giraffe. But playing these three, the doctors played by fucking congestion, man. I sound like I'm high right now,
You sound like you broke your nose.
and I've broken my nose before too. Now, whew, that is a memory I do not want to relive.
Oh boy.
The doctors played by Bill Flynn, Tokyo's played by Grant James, and Tsukiko's played by Pam Doherty. Uh, Bill Flynn you've heard in other roles such as Genzo from One Piece, and Friedrich the Fourth from Legend of the Galactic Heroes, The Neue Tessa. Grant James you've heard as Kido and Baki the Grappler, the original Baki, and Chef Zeph in One Piece. And Pam Doherty you've heard as Sophie Sawalish in Chakugan no Shana 3, and Sakai Jinochi in Summer Wars, which I believe you've covered last year, Zenith.
Yes, I have.
The floor is yours.
All right, first thing I do want to mention the animation. The film is generally pretty good with its animation. The opening in particular, and a lot of the lead up, the main characters. When it gets to the old folks, though, it gets weird. You get the squash and stretch, and they're just things that are out of proportion, especially on like Sukiko's jawline. There's another old lady who looks like she's melting, and then there's another lady whose eyes. What is up with her eyes?
Sad thing is, I tried to fit those ladies in there, but I know the names, but I could not tell which character was which. So
Yeah. Speaking outside of the animation, I think this group is probably the most solid out of everyone, aside from a character we'll discuss later, because he's a more main character and he does a great job. The best out of this group to me was Tsukiko by Pam Doherty. You can tell this is a person who knew her way around voice acting. She's a curmudgeonly old grandmother who just, she has spunk. And I like the character. I like the vocal performance. She was one of the few that didn't have any problems with too much of the proper dialect. I think there was one time where she said "it is" instead of "it's." That kind of threw me off. But for the most part, her dialogue was great. I loved her performance. Grant James's Tokyo I liked as well. I've actually seen Zeph in the English Barati arc, and pretty much use the same vocal intonation here, and I think it works for the character. Tokyo's not that important, so I mean, I'm not going to touch on him too much, but I think overall his lines was great. Although the minor character that was next to him that had the second line in the movie was bad. And that second line threw me off so much because of the way it was delivered, and it was all because of the stunted way he was talking. It just, wow. I don't know his name. Probably a very, very bit part, but like just the second line of the film just took me out of it. As for Dr. Aranami, this one is partially good. I like the voice itself. I think the line delivery, the emotion, the quirk is there. He was hit a lot by the timing and pacing of his words, because there was a lot of times he would hurry up and say something and wouldn't finish a complete thought before starting into another thought, and that really took me out of it. And I don't know if it's the performance or if it's the script or the directing, but there's something off about Bill Flynn's performance in this film, and I couldn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to.
Alright, So starting with Grant James' Tokyo. Yeah, I agree. It was kind of minor role, but like I said, he did kind of provide exposition to the kind of person Hal was, to what Hal used to be, which I will get into that later for very personal reasons. But I think he did okay for what he was given. Pam Doherty is Sukiko, however, yeah, she definitely sounded like she knew her way around and everything. I'll be just acting like the character definitely sounded like she has personal connections to a lot of things because the Sukiko did what she did for Hal because of a favor she owed Kurumi. She recognized Kurumi's brooch on him because, for context, uh, Tsukiko was put in this old folks home because she had an argument with her family because they sold off some of her stuff without knowing. Which that sentiment is gonna be echoed later on, folks. And so Kurumi was the one to help her get her stuff back. And she I guess she essentially owed a debt to him. So she did what she did, and Pam's performance kind of reflected that. It was very good. And the fact is, the grandma from Summer Wars is just it's all the more better. Bill Flynn, I'm probably gonna get into depth a little more because like I said, I didn't really find anything that was too problematic. Like, I didn't really notice anything because again, the stuff was done in 2.5 weeks. But he essentially had the three lead actors on the commentary, one being Bill Flynn, and he kind of, he definitely knows his way about voice acting too, because one of the things they commented on was, okay, this movie is barely passable for sci-fi. Like, there's some elements that make it look sci-fi, but it's not actually sci-fi. It's more slice of life. One of the things he states that sci-fi, if done well, can project the viewer into a future that might not exist, much like this movie. But if done wrong, it can kind of cheat the viewer out in order to advance the story, which unfortunately is also what's happening here. And I think his character did I more or less a pretty good job of that. If albeit that it suffered at some points, because the dubbing is a hive mind. You got the actor, the director, the engineer, but at least with his story, because you will find out later on what the deal is with the Tokyo and the doctor later on. Another thing he stated about this is that a tragic story like this can allow someone to explore their feelings without consequences, which kind of makes perfect sense if you think about it. But we'll get more to that later. But one thing, and this is the thing with all three the lead actors, they kind of make comparisons to like other sci-fi movies that they have favorites of. And what he stated was that it kind of felt like the Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, especially with the plot twist coming up.
I can kind of see that, but
I know, but it's good. I know it's gonna sound convoluted, but when we get into that, we'll get into that. But overall, more or less, these people did their job to the best of their abilities. If there were any issues to be had, it's basically the movie itself that's the problem. But
do you want to move on to our second in command?
essentially, yes, he kind of proved to be useful in providing our one of our main characters' backstories, if you will. We have Ryu, who I guess it turns out he looks kind of like a grifter or something along those lines. But when you get into the backstory of Hal, you find out that I guess he and Hal used to do some retrieval work when they were kids for a debt that needed to be owed, essentially. We'll get into that later, but yeah, he pretty much has been with Hal since childhood. After another tragic moment in his life, but I'm sorry. It's hard to give away really the context of his character without giving away the essentially the backstory of how who will get to the debate section. But Ryu is played by Todd Haberkorn. If Todd Haberkorn, you've heard the other roles such as Marlo Freudenberg from Attack on Titan, Datu Fairy Tale, Jedi in the redub of Sailor Moon, and Ayato Kirishima in the Tokyo Ghoul franchise.
I think Todd is the best voice actor in this entire film. Like, Tsukiko, I loved her. I loved her to death, and I love her in Summer Wars. But I think that what Todd Haberkorn managed to do with this minor character who was barely involved was really amazing. He makes this character mysterious, mischievous. You don't really know his deal, and then it leads to a part where, like, you think something is going to happen to Kurumi, and he's sinister, but then he also shows a vulnerable side when the twist happens. Like, there's layers to this character, and Todd brings that out. Todd is in my eyes the best voice character and the most natural sounding of this dub.
Man. Thinking back on it, I think you may be right. I don't want to say because, like I said, I didn't really have any real major issues with the dub. But thinking back on it, you may be right. And
the layers that they bring. There's another bit that I'm going to bring up when we talk to HAL that relates to this, but overall, Todd just brings his A game. And it works. It's a minor character.
It's a minor
comparatively.
It's a minor character who brings a semi-major backstory, and it works.
Mm-hmm.
That having been said, our opinions are we agree on this performance. It was easily the standout. And now we come to our two main characters in this movie. We have HAL and we have Kurumi. Think about this. These two are a loving couple who... With HAL, okay, his backstory is this. When he was born with a bum heart. His parents had to take out a loan in order to get him a beating heart, but couldn't keep up payments, and as such, they essentially abandoned him. They pulled a Hayate, the combat butler, on him and just abandoned him outright, which I don't know if he, grew up on the streets before his grandfather took him in, or what the deal was. They never really explained that. You find...
There's a lot that's not explained, to be honest, but I'll wait.
To what you find out through him and Ryu's flashbacks is that they essentially both were, I don't know, I guess dumpster diver doing retrieval or something for robots or sci-fi or something. He mentions it when he's talking to Kurumi at the cafe about there's some stuff that robots can do. There's some stuff they pay humans to do that robots can't because of the uptick in maintenance. Anyway, that's kind of fuzzy. He meets Kurumi, they have a very good idea. Everything changes when he accidentally sells off her butter collection because Kurumi has a thing for knickknacks. Like, she was a knickknack shop. Again, that was never really explained, but yeah, they get into an argument. She essentially storms off. They have a big argument at the airport. And that is when if you see the beginning of the movie, there's a plane crash. There's a plane explosion.
Which is never explained. We don't know how this happens.
Probably mechanical failure. To which you believe through the synopsis that HAL went on the plane and died in the accident. It's actually the opposite. Kurumi was the one that was on the plane and died as a result. And I guess how his body was too broken, which I can't fault him for that. When you lose loved ones, you'd be surprised how easily your mind can break. Trust me, I know. which led him to believe this whole time that he thought he was a robot. Yeah, that whole scene you see with him and the doctor, and he's just coming off robotic, like he saw Ivy and stuff. Yeah, no, that should, I guess that's just his uptick for his heart, because, you know, okay, I'm dragging on longer than I should need to be honest.
Can I just weigh in on this before we even talk about the actors? Because this is where I have problems and where I'm just, really, like, I'm torn. Because on the one hand, I see what they're going for.
Yeah.
I see the bait and switch that they wanted to do. And I can clearly see how they wanted this to be a story of someone who saves a girl from her depression after losing a loved one. But they didn't follow through with either idea. And at the end, Kurumi, who is the robot, gets washed away and lost and is all about HAL moving on. I get so much conflicting messages from this, and a lot of it is because of how vague and ill-defined everything is. We don't know anything about the science of this world. We don't know a lot about the technology of the world. Like, sometimes we see high technology with robots, but we don't see. But then it's like a modern day Tokyo, and it's this weird juxtaposition.
Sorry, Ike explained to the commentator that he thinks that this is like set in the near future era. But that's, I mean, because I know there are some Android concepts that are out there, but it's never fully realized just yet. So
yeah, and we just get the explanation that they have the technology to put a human in a robot, which that was part of the thing that took me out of it from the beginning. But, whatever. The story is what was supposed to be about a girl coming to grips with the death. And when we get to the quiet scenes, that's where I really loved it, because it's about, finally starting to get to that. But there just wasn't enough feeling, enough emotion, and a lot of it is because not just the voice acting, but when we get to this point, we see too much foreshadowed. As soon as I saw them arguing, I figured something was up. I could predict where this was going, and then I saw the airport scene, and I'm like, oh, she's the one who died instead. And it's too predictable, for one, but for two, it ruins the idea of them moving on. And the fact that the robot dies in the end also kind of goes against it too. Like, yeah, he needs to move on, and the scene where Ryu tells him, you have to live, that was the only part that really got to me, because it was very reminiscent of Robin's in One Piece. But it is not enough to make me feel for these characters. And I feel a lot of it is because they went in two different directions. It feels like it feels conflicted. And if Kurumi had survived at the end and he had said goodbye to her in that regard, or if he said, you know what, Kurumi's gone, but I still like you, and this is helping, that would have been another thing. But it's do you see what I'm saying? It's conflicted.
Yeah, you know what this reminds me of? Have you ever seen the TV show Pushing Daisies?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it, but I have heard of it.
It's essentially, it's like a little bit more or less a similar concept to go in which the two main characters, one of them is actually dead.
Ah.
Yeah, and the other kind of brings him back to life. But it was never explained like how that was kind of achieved or anything. And then I guess they tried to be with each other, without each other, tried to express their feelings for one another. I'm probably reading a little way too much into this, but yeah, that just popped in my head all of a sudden. I mean, maybe we could discuss that part at length another day, but right now let's get into these actors. HAL is played by Chris Burnett, and Kurumi is played by Brent April. Chris Burnett, you further his characters such as Hiroto Maihara from Assassination Classroom, Romeo from Romeo x Juliet, Yoichi Saotome from Self of the End, Toru Muto from Shiki, and Shinano Toshiro from Saku Tokimaru Hanamaru. But April is no stranger to Dub Talk. You've heard of Mitsu, the Assassination Classroom, Crystal Lens from Attack on Titan, Kodori Itsuka from the Daylight franchise, Yui Yamada from Kasi-san and More Than Glories, and Haruka Tamurai from Real Life.
You know, the problem with these performances is not the performances themselves, because I understand what they were going for. Chris Burnett is very robotic as HAL, which he thinks he's a robot. That makes sense. And when you see the flashbacks, his performance is really, really good. Flashback HAL is legitimately fantastic. I had no issues. There finally is emotion. There's finally a heart and soul to that. But you don't get any of that with present HAL. And I know they were going for the robotic angle, but it really doesn't help that, like, there's a lot of things that are just too stilted for the emotion that they were trying to put into the scene. And if he had gone maybe a little bit more robotic with it and maybe had like a mechanical like tone to his voice, maybe. But it does ruin a lot of the emotion in the scene. And Bryn April is great as Kurumi, but she's supposed to be a robot. And if she is a robot, why doesn't she sound robotic? The twist ruins a lot of this, because when you look back at the stuff with HAL and how he's just like, what does feel mean? And like he does all this stuff, but then like there's glimmers of his emotion coming out, and it, like, if this was just a story about an actual robot helping a girl to get over this, I wouldn't have any issues with the leads, because they would have gone a little bit more with the roboticness, and I think it could have worked, and I would have had more emotion, a robot learning to feel like a human, and to help someone overcome death. That's a good idea. But the twist ruins both of the leads' performances, because at the back of my mind now, I'm thinking, but Bryn wasn't robotic whatsoever. And they only foreshadowed it through the thing that she kept showing with the flashbacks, which, another thing that's not explained, and a huge plot hole for me, how did they get the shots of them having the fight? Were they just recording everything?
You kind of noticed that at one, because remember they said in the beginning that during the date that when Hal dropped that little glowing thing, she thought it was his heart. I guess, like, you know, kind of like an external defibrillator, that kind of thing. Because usually when you have an artificial heart or pacemaker, you should have kind of a device on the outside that's supposed to keep it charging, keep it pumping.
But if it was his heart, though, then how is he still surviving?
Okay, see, that's the thing. She assumed it was his heart.
Yeah.
And ever since that day, you know, they kept it nearby, because we know that it's damn sure not a pacemaker.
I just... There's so many things that...
At least that bit of technology I can explain. I did not realize that there was actually a camera, so...
I just don't know why it was recording then. Like, is it always recording? Why would it be always recording?
My guess is it is either malfunctioned or, like, you know, it comes out by touch or something like that. Maybe proximity.
Okay, I could probably buy that. I'm just...
Again, a lot of these things are not really explained. See, here's the thing about me. When I see stuff like this, I try to make sense of it, to at least, you know, come to terms with it. I've seen some stuff in the past that I could not try to explain at all. This is the best I can do at this point for this movie.
For me, when it comes to plot holes, if the story up to that point is fine, I can write it off. Like, the ending to Afro Samurai makes no goddamn sense. But the lead up to it is great. And I'm just like, you know what? I can still enjoy it. With this, I found myself scratching my head a lot. And then the twist happened and it ruined perfectly good performances.
Well, there's another reason for that, but go
on. It just, if the roles had been reversed, if Kurumi was more robotic and HAL wasn't, or if the story had been changed, these performances would be fine. But the story is the problem. And I'm sorry, Chris. I'm sorry, Bryn. You did your best. But you couldn't do anything with this. I'm sorry.
You done?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's a perfectly good reason why things seem the way it is, even before the twist. When I listened to the commentary, I found out that one person was told the twist of the movie, the other was not. Care to take a guess which?
HAL?
Knew the twist or didn't?
HAL, I would think Chris knew the twist.
It's actually the opposite.
Huh?
Yep.
But
yeah, when Mike directed him, he didn't tell him the twist of the movie, so that's why he kind of gave a dry. He said that's why he gave a dry read overall. Yeah, because to keep to keep people guessing until the end. Like I said, when the sci-fi when done right can project the viewer to a future that might not exist. If done wrong, it can cheat the viewer out, and I think in your case you feel cheated because you didn't know the twist. Chris certainly didn't know the twist. Bryn did. And that's why Bryn's voice wasn't robotic. Because, again, you didn't know the twist until towards the end of the movie. So
it should have had slight twinges or something. Or, I don't know. It just, to me, it's a hard thing to do. And I understand this. But what I personally would have done if I was the ADR director and I'm not Mike McFarland. He's much better than I will ever be. But if I was doing this, I would have probably told both of them so they could have both parts of inflection in their voice. And it just, to me, Bryn sounds too natural if she's supposed to be a robot.
Well, yeah, I can agree with that, but the problem with that is, like I explained, they only did this done in 2.5 weeks, so one, they really have a lot of time, and two, there was really no source material other than the sub of this movie to go off of, so...
Yeah... I'm sorry, guys. Like, I don't want to come across as negative, because I don't think this is a bad movie. I think it's just okay, personally. And I think there's a lot of talent involved in this. It's just, there's a lot of things going against it. And when I was watching it, I wanted to feel for it, but I didn't. And that, I don't know, it rubbed me the wrong way.
But anyway, yeah, so my takes on the performances, because I know Chris described his voice as thin and kind of shows. He's a guy you normally see around Funimation, like you see him in some roles, but he's not. You don't really see him in as much of a lead role as this. So I guess it was kind of, taking out the frying pan into the fire. I guess because the fact that this was done on such a short time constraint, and with director you can only do multiple takes. It's up to the director to decide which one to go with. So he probably could give it his best. He probably could give it his worst. We don't know. I mean, I would like to be a fly on the wall for this session, but you do what you can. At the end of the day, it's what works for Mike, and honestly, I don't really have any problem with it. Because hell, it kept me convinced that he was a robot this whole time, and surprise, surprise, he wasn't. He was just in shock, which, believe me, I know because much like how I also lost a couple of loved ones actually. I mean, yesterday was the anniversary of my grandfather's death, but what really shocked me was when I lost my grandmother, because the night I found out we lost her, I barely had a cohesive thought in my mind. So when I see Hal in his situation, I can relate more than I would like to
I can
admit, but I can
understand
relate.
that. I can understand that. I have lost several people in my lifetime, and that numb feeling of directionlessness, and it's not so easy to get over. So I can understand Hell breaking down because of this. I can relate.
Yeah, so I mean, to him, Kurumi's just his way of coping. So, what about Kurumi? Which getting into Brent's performance, because the thing about this is, this performance was pretty much during a heyday when she started beginning. To give you context, this dub came out, I believe. I tried to check August 2013. Brent started in July 2013 at Funimation, doing a couple roles, namely Melody from Fairy Tale. And so I guess as Hollywood would say, she's kind of green and it shows, but it never really took me out of anything. I guess my one caveat with this is, she said herself, this is actually close to an actual voice. But the thing about this is, it came off a little more cutesy than grown up because, we don't know the age of Kurumi, before she passed at least. And so, in some ways it works, in some ways it kind of did it, especially with the animation, because, I mean, if you look at the box art of it, she's got this wide mouth grin and just this happy-go-lucky face. Jesus Christ, those eyes are big. But, and she kind of lives for this dramatic lifestyle because she had also said in commentary that people come to these kinds of stories, like I said, to explore the feelings without consequence. I guess in some ways, slice of life or tragic stories, either reminds them of tragedy they themselves encounter, or or it helps them to explore feelings I guess they never knew they had. I mean, hell, that was one of the reasons I got back into anime after such a long drought, because years of TV comedies have kind of soured me, because there were things that were supposed to be funny that I never found funny, and I thought I was losing my emotions. I almost ended up becoming robotic like Hal herself, and then, I mean, hell, if it wasn't for Baka and Tess and listening to Brittany and a lot of things, which, as other people in the podcast will attest, I am a huge fan of her. Her words can carry that kind of weight that when I first saw this film, that twist kind of threw me for a loop, but it had me in tears because she has that kind of voice that can really pull your heartstrings. I guess if you let her, you really. Like
There
I
were.
said,
Go on.
like I said, she lives for that dramatic kind of lifestyle, and she even said herself, it kind of reminded her of Chobits, which we covered for the anniversary on the podcast recently. She said there was a parallel between Kurumi and Chi, which I can kind of see, but I have not watched Chobits to explore that depth, and I don't know if I'd want to at this point. So,
I mean, I saw a little bit of Chobits. I like it, but it's very much of its time. I mean, you have there's an entire scene where Chi's walking down the street just saying panties, and I find that funny, but your mileage may vary.
yeah.
But I like Bryn. I think Bryn's a wonderful actress, and the moments that got me the most emotional were hers. It's just issues.
And it's kind of funny because going back to the whole movie thing, because these two guys gave on the commentaries, they gave the favorite films, I guess, was similar concepts to this film. Like Chris talked about Back to the Future and Looper, and Brian actually talked about Inception, if you could believe it. Which I can actually see this now, if you think about it, because the whole thing with Marion Cotillard did Inception, which if you never seen it, well, your mileage may vary. I know. I personally like the film, but I know some people have a problem with Christopher Nolan's films. So, to each their own. That's all I'm gonna say.
I love Inception, but I feel like it's one of those films, kind of like Memento, where I think it's really, really good, but another person could watch it and be confused because a lot of it requires very careful, like, attention span. Um, which HAL is kind of the opposite. If you don't pay as much attention as I did while watching it, you probably won't see the twist coming. And a lot of this is because I've been reviewing a lot of films and writing scripts lately, so I've just trained my mind to look at things a certain way. It just critically, I don't think HAL holds up. Emotionally, if you're just reviewing it, you might like it.
Yeah, if this is your first time, it's gonna throw you for a loop, but it's pretty decent. I don't think it holds up on later rewatches because at that point you already know what's coming, and Bryn's effectiveness kind of wears off over time. Like I generally like I said, I've generally liked her stuff because her words bear weight when it comes to dramatic things. But in this one, it just kind of wears down after multiple repeats of watching it.
Yeah, like some movies lend themselves to multiple watches. Like for example, I can watch Scott Pilgrim multiple different times and get new stuff out of it, or Fight Club, or stuff like that, or Knives Out. I've watched that several times and I see new things every single time. This film has one trick, and unfortunately, if you're paying attention or if you watch it a second time, you're gonna see this trick coming, and the rest of it is just not as good to hold it up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, personally, I think for me with these two, I guess in a way it's kind of like Romeo and Juliet. If Romeo hadn't committed suicide, if Romeo hadn't God damn it! What is wrong with my nose?
If Romeo hadn't committed seppuku.
Yes, basically. Oh, good guy. I'm gonna enjoy how it is who I am later on. Jesus fuck.
Trust me, I do worse on my own recordings. My editors hate me. They love me, but they're like, Zen, you really need to stop. Like, just say a full line.
Oh yeah, thank God it's just the two of us. It's the two of us.
We can make it if we try.
Oh, okay, let's not go that far. But yes, I mean, what our general opinions are, whatever faults the movie may have, kind of reflected in the performances. But the performances weren't really all that bad. They did the best with what they were given, and for Rush job, it was pretty good, pretty decent. Uh, that having been said, let's get to our final thoughts. So, Zenith. Oh boy, here we go. What are your thoughts on this film?
I again, I do not think this is a bad film.
But
I think it's okay at best, but it's confused. It doesn't have a solid direction. It tries to do two different things at once. It wants this twist. It wants to have this relationship, but it doesn't commit to either one, and it's hurt by it. In terms of the dub, it's very too transliterated. It's very too literal to the script. It feels unnatural at times, and while there are two performances that were super great, a film that takes me out of the entire film with the second character line. And yes, it's a side character, and it's happened before where, side characters tend to get like given to more green actors. It's the second line of the film, and it just kept happening throughout. I kept got take it out. I wanted to feel for these characters. I really did. But there's only a couple moments, and it was the quiet moments. It was the moments where they didn't talk. And the music was swelling, and it was silent, and it's like, that's the original movie doing something right. That's not the dub doing something right. And so I can't give it that. When I'm just looking at the dub, I don't think it's that great. I think they tried their best. I love Mike McFarland, but I just don't think it's quite there. They either didn't have enough time, or they didn't have enough experience with, the voice actors might not have had enough experience, or it's just they didn't have enough time to redo the lip flaps or something. I'm not an expert on dubbing. I do know how game dubbing works, and how, like, a lot of times you just change it to match the new voice actors rather than matching the old lip flaps. I don't know how it is quite in American dubbing studios. It just feels off. And that, to me, just threw out a lot of it. Pam Doherty and Todd Haberkorn really got me into the movie. They were great. The rest have problems.
Okay, so pretty much when I got into this film, okay, so I bought this at, like I said, at AB, the only year I went to, as part of a trifecta. And I bought it because, again, I'm a Bryn April fanboy. I generally enjoy her work. So when I started watching this film, I was, of course, like everybody else, I was taken aback by the twist of the film, but it never really bothered me or anything. It just, I made the drama harder than it extremely needed to be, but, Bryn's performance made it work. That having been said, yeah, this was not really one of Mike McFarland's finest. Like I said, it only took him 2.5 weeks to do this dub, and he was just coming off the first season of Attack on Titan. So having to switch between, shouty, screaming action time to something more quiet and intimate, it kind of takes a while to get adjusted to, but I do think it was okay for what he was given. The really, really tough part with the story is not only having to figure out what was going on in the sub, but the fact that there was really no source material for this, which, back in the day was really tough before cyber dubs, which is ironic because I also found out this year they published the manga for HAL. So hopefully, maybe you'll make it short one day over to the West, and maybe we could get it localized to figure out what exactly is going on and make sense of this. But
yeah, I mean, I know a lot of things are finished in the manga, and perhaps I'll do a licensed media limbo episode on it and talk about adaptation process.
And to add fuel to the fire, apparently the body that was a storyboard and the episode director on this, they also did Guilty Crown. And we all know how Guilty Crown kind of turned out, so...
I don't, but I can imagine from your reaction.
I dropped it after 3 episodes, because I could not bear what was happening next, but...
So it was like a King's Game type anime.
Never mention that show in front of me ever again.
Don't talk to me or my son ever again.
There was no King's Game in Ba Sing Se.
There was no Tsukihime anime.
I don't even know what that is, but yeah, like I said, for Rush Job, it was pretty good for what they were given. Could it be better? Yeah. Am I mad about it? No, not really. It's just one of those things, like, I guess if you have an hour to spare, and you just need something comforting or soothing or something you could relate to a little bit, this would be good for you to watch. Otherwise, I would probably just use one. But at least, at the very least, it had more emotionality than Weathering Into You because and I know that's sacrilege for me to say, but even though it was a Makoto Shinkai film, Weathering with used dub was kind of a mixed bag as well. But also the ending to that is kind of weird, but it's a Makoto Shinkai film. What do you expect?
I personally would say if you're looking for something emotional and uplifting, watch Kase-san and Morning Glories, because that is a little bit of both. If you're looking for something with a twist, there are other things out there that can do this a lot better.
But yeah, overall, it is what it is. It's a product of its time, whether that time be the past or the future.
But the future is in the past.
Yeah. It's Back to the Future.
In any case, I think the general consensus we have is that there are better things out there, but if you want to check it out, you can find this on Funimation. It is only available for premium subscribers, unfortunately. I kind of wish... I kind of feel like this is one that could have been given for free personally, but that's just me. With that being said, though, if you want to check out any other anime stuff, you can check it out on Funimation or Crunchyroll. There's some good stuff out there. I would highly recommend Kase-san and Morning Glories and some other stuff that are out there. They're good films. I need to see more of them. I'm not as big into the anime films as I should be.
Yeah.
And if you want to cry your eyes out, watch Assassination Classroom.
Oh, yes. Because, oh my god. But just remember, there's one episode after the episode that'll make you cry. I learned that the hard way.
Yep. There is one episode afterwards, and it is helpful for the future. So I think that's actually good anime to watch instead of HAL, if you're into that sort of thing.
Yes. So anyway, I went off a Zenith statement. If you want to watch this film for yourself, it's available on Funimation's part of premium membership. You can sign up for a free 14-day trial. Just remember that after the 14 days, they will charge your card. If it is somehow available floating on YouTube, it better be one you can be able to pay for. If I ever find out you post a pirate link, it will be deleted immediately from the contents. Yes, I am that one guy that does read the comments. Don't think you can fool me.
Yeah, I try to read the comments for like the first day or so. I'm not in charge of the channel, so I don't after that I don't see them. On my channel I do.
That having been said, the movie is also available on Blu-ray and DVD. As for the podcast, we can be found on YouTube and the Dub Talk Podcast. We have an Instagram, a Tumblr, and a Twitch account. Twitch will try to do more stuff with. Tumblr, what's the point of doing stuff with it anyway? It's dead, for God's sakes.
I mean, they took out the porn. What's the point of Tumblr without the porn?
It's the internet. You can find porn anywhere.
Yeah, but Tumblr was the source of porn. Without that, what's the point?
Yes, we're also available. If you don't want to watch this video, but you do want to hear us while you're on the road, on the go, work it out, whatever you need be, we're also available on Spotify, Podbean, and Apple Podcasts. Wherever you listen to your local podcast, we'll be there. But this podcast couldn't be done without you, the viewers, and our patrons, of course. Yes, our patrons in the $5 tier, we'd like to thank B. Morris, Michelle Travis, B. Morris, Michelle Travis, holy shit, come on, let me finish the fucking episode, will ya? Oh my god, this is a disaster.
Man, I picked the wrong week to stop sniffing glue.
Yes, we'd also like to thank our patrons. In the $5 tier, we have B. Morris, Michelle Travis, Miraculous Cortisone, and you go Robin with Yowie heads. In our $10 tier, we have Anthony Simpson, Carly Leistercat, Crimson Kinder, Jacob Wilson, J2 aka Sharon, Julia W, and of course Marissa Lenti. Thank you to those who helped make this episode possible. We respect you very much, and we hope you continue to support us in our future endeavors. That having been said, Zenith, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me in several different places. I am on Twitter at Zenith Will Rule. That's where I basically live tweet my life. And you can get updates on everything I'm doing, whether it be stuff that I'm doing in the future, schedule future episodes of my show, stuff like that. If you want to watch my stuff, I have two channels. My gaming channel doesn't have like a custom URL yet, but I'm at Zenith Warrior Gaming. That's where I put all my game streams. I'm working on Let's Plays as well, but I just got my new microphone, so it's just trying to iron out the kinks with it. But my main channel is Zenith Warrior Princess. That's where you have the Bun Squad, my storyline / review series where I review a bunch of different stuff, and my viewers, which are my cute, loyal, fluffy bunny followers, chime in and see my cats who can talk go on wacky adventures. It's a lot of fun. I hope you check it out.
Yeah, so that's for me. I'm an assistant editor for the podcast. I can be found on my YouTube at Chapstar1. I can be found on Twitter at Chapstar529. If a blog that's collected dust, I do plan to get solo podcast at some point. Maybe something with Senate for rule. Who knows? You never know what life will bring you.
You never know what the future may hold. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Check us out if you like what you see here today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell for every notification. Whatever, smash the buttons, whatever the meme is these days.
Yes. So, any last words before we head out?
Just thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again in the future. I have anime reviews on my channel. I do History of One Piece. That is back. History of One Piece survives. And I have other anime stuff that are coming out in the future, such as Blood Blockade Battlefront, which, if luck serves, will be done by November. So, we have stuff to look forward to.
Yes, this is probably going to be the shortest episode in history, but I guess to all of you from us here at the Dub Talk Podcast, good night and otaku on. Keep it emotional.
And just watch out for robots.
Yeah.
You never know when they're going to uprise.
Keep it emotional.